All right, let's talk about corn. We all know what it looks like, right? It's a staple, you see it at summer barbecues, in your gas tank. It's just everywhere. But the corn we know today is hiding a pretty wild secret. Its origin story is one of the most dramatic makeovers in the entire history of food. Seriously, you wouldn't even recognize it. So, get a load of this. On the left, you've got our familiar corn. On the right, that's its ancestor, a wild grass called teosinte. And they couldn't be more different. Teosinte is this bushy thing with a bunch of tiny little ears. And each of those ears only has like 5 to 12 kernels that are rock hard and pretty much inedible. The difference is so huge that for the longest time, when scientists first suggested they were related, other scientists basically said, no way, absolutely not. And this right here is probably the best way to wrap your head around it. This isn't just a small change, like different types of apples. This is a wolf to chihuahua level transformation. We're talking about a complete reimagining of what a plant could be. And it was all guided by human hands. So this brings us to the big question, the real mystery here. How in the world did our ancestors take that scraggly wild grass and turn it into one of the most important crops on the entire planet? Well, it's an incredible story, and it didn't happen overnight. Yeah, this wasn't some quick project. We're talking about a transformation that took thousands and thousands of years to unfold, starting way back about 9,000 years ago. And the engine that drove this whole thing is a process called artificial selection. It's basically evolution on fast forward with a human director. See, nature didn't care if teosinte was easy to eat, but humans did. Early farmers just noticed, hey, this one plant is a little better than the others. So they saved its seeds and planted them next year. Simple as that. And just look at this timeline. It is mind-bogglingly slow. For the first few thousand years, the changes were probably tiny. Like maybe a plant had a couple extra kernels, or the shell was just a little bit softer. But those tiny choices, made over and over, generation after generation, they started to add up. By 4,000 years ago, you had something that you'd actually recognize as corn. And that process just kept going, leading to the thousands of types we have today, from popcorn to sweet corn. Okay, so that's the big picture, but what was actually happening under the hood, genetically? This is where it gets really cool. Scientists have now managed to pinpoint the exact genetic light switches that our ancestors were flipping without even knowing it. And it turns out this massive, epic transformation really boils down to just a handful of genes. In fact, you can point to 3 specific genes that were the real game changers. First up, there's a gene that controls how branchy the plant is. In teosinte, this gene is super active, which gives it that wild, bushy look. But early farmers, they kept picking the plants that were a bit less bushy, a bit more focused on a single stalk. What they were actually doing was selecting for a mutation in this branching gene. That mutation told the plant, hey, stop wasting energy on all these branches and just focus it all on one main stalk. And that one stalk was perfect for holding one big, heavy ear of corn. Then you have the gene that literally made corn edible. Remember how teosinte kernels were like little rocks? Well, a single mutation in this gene is what turned that stone-hard casing into the soft, paper-thin covering that modern corn kernels have. Think about it. Without that one change, we probably wouldn't even be talking about corn as a food today. And the third major player is a gene that controls how the seeds get around. In the wild, teosinte kernels need to fall off easily to spread and grow new plants. But a key mutation caused the kernels to stick tight to the cob. Now, for us, that's fantastic. It makes harvesting super easy. But for the plant, it's a disaster. It can't reproduce on its own anymore. And what's so incredible is that these ancient farmers had no clue about DNA or genes. They were just being practical. They looked at their crops and thought, that one's a little easier to pick, or that one has more to eat. So they saved those seeds. They were, in effect, genetic engineers, and they didn't even know it. So, this all leads to a really fascinating twist in the story. In our quest to create the perfect crop for us, we accidentally created a species that is completely 100% dependent on us to survive. So what was the trade-off here? What did corn have to give up in order to become so incredibly useful to humanity? Well, the answer is pretty simple. It gave up its wildness. It gave up its independence. If you think about it, modern corn is helpless in the wild. The kernels are glued to the cob, so they can't spread.
That giant ear is so heavy that the stalk would just topple over and rot. And when we plant them in these perfect, neat rows, it's basically an all-you-can-eat buffet for any pest that comes along. A modern corn plant, if you just left it to fend for itself in nature, it would be gone in a single generation. No question.
This is really the ultimate sign of domestication. We didn't just tame corn. We've created a biological partner that literally cannot exist without us. And, of course, our modern civilization can't really exist without it either. It's this codependent relationship we've built over thousands of years. So why should we care about this 9,000-year-old story? What does it have to teach us today? Well, it's because this is maybe the clearest, most dramatic example you can find of how evolution actually works, and just how powerful selection can be. What's so cool is that artificial selection and natural selection use the exact same playbook. You need variation in a population, and those traits have to be heritable. The only difference is the boss. In nature, the environment is the boss, selecting for what survives. With corn, humans were the boss, selecting for what was useful. The process is identical, it's just the goal that's different. You can really boil down the entire 9,000-year journey of corn into this simple but incredibly powerful loop. People observed differences, they experimented by choosing what to plant next, and over a vast amount of time, the plant itself adapted to those choices. Observation, experimentation, adaptation, over and over again. And that really brings us to a final thought. Every single ear of corn is the result of thousands of years of these tiny, deliberate choices. It really makes you stop and think, doesn't it? What about the choices we're making right now? With the foods we engineer, the technologies we build, the world we're shaping, what kind of long-term stories are our choices writing for the future?